Well, I guess you can tell by the music and by the title Snowing in July that this has something to do with snowflakes. And you know what? You're right. You're so smart. So here we are in a beautiful July scene, and yes, it is snowing. And of course, we're going to use Snowflake 02. So let's take a look now at opacity. Now, opacity has both a start and an end opacity. Now, let's first change the start opacity to 0. So let's stop this real quick, change it to 0, and let's start it back up. And notice what happens to our snowflake. That's right, when the snowflake first starts, it starts very faint, and as it gets lower and lower to the ground, it becomes more and more opaque. Now let's see what happens when we change the end opacity to 0 and the start opacity to 255. Okay, so let's take a look up in the sky, and where's my snowflakes? Oh yes, I guess it would help if I hit play. Alright, here's my snowflakes. Notice how they start very opaque, and as they get lower and lower to the ground, they become more and more fainter. Alright, so now let's see what happens when we change the opacity for start and end to both 0. Oh, look, no snowflakes. So sad. But I want some snowflakes, so let me stop this. And let's just choose some random opacities. 210 looks like a good number. And let's take a look at something called blend mode. Now, blend mode has 3 parts: alpha, addition, and subtraction. Alpha means that the luminosity of the color we selected will be blended with the background colors, whereas an addition means the luminosity will be added to our color, which is white. Now, subtraction is obviously the opposite of addition, means the luminosity will be removed, giving us these scary, evil-looking snowflakes coming down. But let's just use alpha, and let's move on to something else. Size matters, and so does rotation, and so does life. Alright, so let's first get started by taking a look at Rocky T, and let's throw in another particle. So under template, let's choose basic 04, and let's make sure that it is linked to our Rocky T. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this started, and let's see what the particle looks like. Notice that the particle starts small, but as it moves along its life, it becomes larger and larger. This is because we have something called size. Now, size has both a start and an end, and both of them have width and height. So let's go ahead and start with the end and change the width to 5 and the end height to 5, and notice what happens to our particles. Now we get these flying yellow dots coming out of the top of Rocky T. Well, let's change the width to 10 for start and the end width to 10, and notice what happens to our particles. Now we have these flying yellow beans coming out of the top of our prop. So let's change this real quick. Look at rotate, and let's look at initial angle and angular velocity. Now, at first I want us to change the minimum to 0 and the maximum to 0 just to see what happens to our particle. Notice now our particle comes out of the prop, but has no rotation at all. But watch when we change the initial angle. Notice as the initial angle increases, our particles have a more and more vertical look. Now we can also change it by changing the minimum to negative 359, and watch what happens to the particle. Now they have these negative rotations. And we can set the maximum to 359, and now we have these crazy bouncing jelly beans coming out of the top of my prop. Oh, I like jelly beans. But these jelly beans are giving me a headache, so let's go to maximum and minimum of light frame and change it to 0 and watch what happens. I killed my particles. Alright, but let's change the maximum back to 20 and watch what happens to our particles. Okay, now you see that they're bubbling out the top here of the prop. Let's change it to 100 so you get a better look. And notice that they're coming out. But notice that not all of the particles are making it to the top. This is because the minimum light frame is 0. If we set them both to 100, all the particles will make it to this height. But if we change it back to 50, you'll notice that half the particles make it to the top, and the other half die right here in the middle.